Hey there, colleague. This is going to be another video where I look at what other teachers are doing and applying the things that I write about in my books, These Six Things and The Will to Learn. And I just basically celebrate how other teachers take things that I say and make them about infinity% better than they are in my actual class. So, yesterday I was with colleagues in Kenowa Hills. It's a school about 30 minutes drive from my own school, and I've been blessed to be partnering with that school during the fall of 2024, just helping them to take ownership of and make the will to learn strategies a part of what they do. This is not a Dave Stewart does, this is what we do here. And so in my second visit the other day, I basically said, okay, I introduced all these strategies to you, and now I want to know what you made of them. So what I'd like you to do is to get together in groups by strategy that you focused on. And I want you just to brainstorm together what were the obstacles that you ran into, the things that you found when doing the strategy were difficult. What were the outcomes? What positive changes did you notice the strategy making in your class? And then three, what were the pro tips? So I want to look at one of the slides that one of the groups made. And this was the group that was working with mini sermons from an apologist, Winsome and Sure. So take a look here at some of the things that these folks wrote down that are just, I think, completely brilliant. I couldn't have said it better myself. So thing number one is that these people realize that it's hard, it's an obstacle that when you're explaining in these little brief sermons to students why math is important or science or social studies is important, you really got to diversify the why. You got to use all the different colors of the rainbow, and just try to explain it in a bunch of different ways. So if you're not familiar with the rainbow why, let me show you. Here we go. So the rainbow of why is just all the different ways from the research that human beings come to value things that they're doing, whether it's tennis or strength building or mathematics or essay writing. People can value that work for a number of different reasons. It could be because it's useful, it's relevant, it's beautiful, it's enjoyable, it gives me a sense of power or autonomy. It helps me connect with other people or enhance my social status. There's a bunch of different angles to valuing something. And so what this group came up with is really, really an important point that I try to make in the book, but I think it's just hard for me as a presenter, as a writer to like get across just how important it is to paint with all the different colors. But that can be like really stressful and onerous for a teacher to feel like, I got to come up with all these different ways to explain these things. And so I love that they also mentioned, you know, it's not going to work for everyone all the time. And that's not your goal. Your goal is not to, in 30 or 60 seconds, convince every skeptical teenager in your class that, yes, in fact, math is important for you. It's worthwhile for you. That's not your goal. Your goal instead is to look at this one, meet them where they are at. And can I tell you where they're at, colleagues? Most of them, they're at a place of deep skepticism. And by the way, it's respectable skepticism because I guarantee that if you're teaching high schoolers, if you're teaching middle schoolers, at some point in their educational journey, they've developed a body of evidence that actually math isn't that valuable, that math isn't fun, that math isn't enjoyable, that English, it doesn't include them. They don't belong as a reader. They don't belong as a writer. That phys ed is just not a place where they can experience enjoyment. Like they've built evidence for this by the time they get to secondary school. And so meeting them where they're at is basically saying, I respect that you're skeptical. I share some of your skepticisms, but in this class, I'm going to help you to unpack and discover and experience that actually, despite that evidence, despite that stuff that maybe you've experienced, there are some really, really great things about what we're doing together this year as we work towards mastery in this course. I think this is really an important point too, this right here. Avoid the rabbit hole. So as they described this to us as they presented their slide, they basically said, watch out because students will try to actually get you going on your mini sermon and they'll love to watch you just eat away the clock and go for 5 minutes or 10 minutes about how important the class is. Don't do that. You kind of actually want to do it nonchalant. You want this to be, look at this, pretty unforced. You want it to come across as like, oh, by the way, history is amazing because blank. Oh, by the way, this next thing that we're about to study is really cool because blank. Oh, I just happened to be thinking the other day about how this really neat thing is something that you can experience in science class. it's kind of got to come off as like this gentle, winsome type of approach. Like you're just so confident. It's so obvious to you that the work that you're doing in your class is valuable. You don't really have to like push this super hard. This doesn't have to be some big forceful speech that you're just like grinding to get out. You're just sort of dropping these little nuggets as you go. As you go, you've got this treasure chest. You know it's filled with treasure. It's your class. And you're just periodically going to give them a little peek in there and just remind them, hey, this is treasure. I'm opening a treasure box right now. This is treasure. Now, here's a slide that another group made about mini sermons. I like this. Even though we're calling it a mini sermon, you're not trying to come off as preachy. You really don't want to come off as preachy. You want to come off as someone who's just like super aware of how good this is, but it's almost like, hey guys, we're going to get into our lesson here. Give me 60 seconds to just share this thought that I have with you. Then we'll dive right into our lesson. It's just like I'm nonchalantly going to drop this amazing value bomb, this little rainbow of why promo message. It's going to be short, and then we're going to move on. And this just has a way of seeping past the walls that secondary students often have to valuing school. It just sort of seeps past. It's kind of like, okay, here's my student, here's their heart, and it's super fortified. There's all these fortifications against possibly caring about school or thinking that school is cool. And instead of me trying to like battering ram that thing away, I'm just going to bake an amazing feast. I'm going to let that aroma waft across those big fortifications. I'm just going to let you smell that on a regular basis. And slowly but surely, you're going to kind of peek out the window. You're going to kind of crack the door, and you're going to maybe come out and meet me and put this to the test and really experience, is this teacher, are they really telling me that math is that cool, that English can be that meaningful, that science is that amazing? And in fact, yeah, we are. If you open up those doors, you're going to find that. And mini sermons are a way of sending this delicious aroma across to your students. And so we're kind of getting at something that's hard about this, right? This has to be real. It has to be real. It has to come from me. I, as an individual who decided at some point that I was going to teach what I teach, I decided that for great reasons. There were a lot of directions I could have gone with my life. I decided to do this, to teach this at this grade level of students. And so really the work for me as a teacher is to tap back into that and continually tap myself into that so that I can regularly produce these little explanations of why, these little apologetics-based, argumentative mini sermons of why I think that this is actually worth the time that we're giving it. And what do we get for all this work? Well, here's one thing. This is a sign that it's starting to work. When you start to have less students asking, is this for a grade? I love that these Kenowa teachers pointed this out because I find that this is true. If you increase the frequency and the quality and the authenticity and the diversification of mini sermons that you give to your students, over time, they're just going to start to realize this teacher's not operating at a grade level. Yeah, this might be for a grade. Yeah, I might be curious about whether it's for a grade, but I'm going to be less likely to ask that because I realize this teacher is operating at a different level than just do this because it's a grade, don't do this because it's not a grade. And so those questions will reduce over time. I thought that was a really cool outcome that they experienced. And so probably part of it is because it's humanizing us. We're not this like artificial person who works for this artificial institution called a school. We're a human being with interests, with values of our own, who decided logically, intelligently, yeah, I'm going to teach this because this is amazing what I'm teaching. And I'm sharing with my students why it's amazing. So mini sermons, it's one of those things where the more you do it, the more you realize it's a get to do. It's a get to do. Now, I have to remind myself to do it. I have to periodically use the rainbow of why and brainstorm why history or English, whatever I'm teaching, is valuable. There's some work in it for me. But ultimately, the more that I give these mini sermons, the more that I find this is good stuff. I'm glad that I get to do this, that I get to be a person in my students' lives who's going to point to the magnificent mountain that's available in my discipline, the mountain that the more you climb it, the higher you climb it, the better and the better and the better views that you get. If you like videos like this where I look at the work that actual teachers are doing with the things that I write about, let me know in the comments and I'll make more. I appreciate you, colleague. I hope you have a good rest of your day.